So I tried to do this video like 2 separate times within the past year, and I just was never really happy with the results. So let's hope third time's the charm. If you haven't been here before, hello. My name is Tiana, or Chai Tea. I talk about movies, fashion, aesthetics, whatever. This is not what this is about. If you've been following me for a while, if you know anything about me, you may or may not know that I have Crohn's disease. To be honest, I don't really mention it even to people that I know in real life. I think I've mentioned it maybe twice on this channel, but this past year has been exactly 10 years since I was diagnosed. Yay! I thought I'd give a little story time on my own diagnosis, mostly because I think it's a good lesson in self-advocacy. And with the amount of people, especially young people, that are kind of spiking in rates of chronic illnesses for various reasons, I felt like it might be helpful for someone, hopefully. So you may be wondering, what is Crohn's disease? Crohn's disease is an inflammatory bowel disease. It mostly affects the lower intestine and the colon. I can explain it in the way that my pediatrician explained it to me. To make it simple, basically your white blood cells, which are supposed to fight off infection, things like that, gets confused and says, actually this thing that's like helping you digest is bad, so I'm going to attack it. And it does. This results in a variety of things that are uncomfortable at best. And at worst, well, speaking of which, I want to keep this as user-friendly as possible, but I will just say up front that I'm going to be talking about a lot of things, medical things, the medical industry, prejudice, stomach problems, things to do with body and weight. I'll try and put like very specific timestamps for that stuff though, with a sound effect too. But if you're uncomfortable about any of these things, like, don't feel obligated to watch. So, in fall of 2011, I was a senior in high school. I was deeply stressed for a number of reasons. College applications were coming into effect. I had put too many advanced classes on my schedule, wasn't sleeping because I was staying up until like 3 and 4 in the morning, trying to get my homework done. I was constantly like anxious and stressed, and I think that all of this is building up to say that I was not in a great place health-wise. I was feeling kind of off, so I went to a doctor and they told me that I was anemic, which is very common among people who have Crohn's disease, but we didn't know I had Crohn's disease at the time. The doctor prescribed me iron pills and sent me on my merry way. Now, if you don't know, iron pills are extremely hard on the stomach. And that's kind of where it began. This was around maybe November. I had dropped a few advanced classes. I was getting a little bit more sleep, but I was still feeling like bad, like off. And like I had this like weird kind of pang in my middle that I couldn't explain. It was like general malaise and discomfort that I couldn't really pin down. I'd stopped taking the iron pills because I read on the box that it could cause stomach problems, and that's what I thought that this kind of malaise that I was feeling was. Thanksgiving came, and my mom made, a Thanksgiving meal. I sat down to eat it. I took 2 bites. And I was in the worst pain I had ever felt in my life. At the time, I felt like instead of eating like whatever it was, turkey, I was eating forks or like a pufferfish that just decided right there, then and there in my stomach to go, phew. I stopped and I like laid down and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I tried again the next morning to eat, and the same thing happened, and I felt like this wave of nausea, this wave of pain that was scary to me. Like I'd never really experienced that before. By the afternoon, my mom was like, okay, something's wrong, let's go to the doctor. Went to the doctor and I told them like all the medications I had been taking. I was like, I stopped taking iron pills about 3 days ago. They were like, oh, that's it. It's the iron pills. You'll be fine. And they sent me home. I was not fine. I did not become fine. I went home and the same thing kept happening. Every day I would get up, I would try and eat, and I would feel pain from it. So from Thanksgiving-ish to right before Christmas, I started to decline really fast. Started becoming very fatigued because I wasn't eating. Started skipping class because I was too tired, and I would skip class and I would just sleep or catch up on homework that I missed. But I would skip class and sleep and try and eat and sleep, and that was it. I started going to class like maybe 3 days a week at most. The only things that I could really stomach down were like plain potato chips and plain wheat tortillas. And even that like hurt my stomach, but it was like less than anything else. But I still wasn't, eating correctly. I still wasn't healthy. My mom noticed that I wasn't improving, so when I didn't get better after a couple days, like the doctor said, she started taking me to the doctor again, different doctors, to get a second opinion. And that was to no avail, really. What I was met with when I came to different doctors was confusion, disbelief. For example, I went to one doctor who said that I actually had an eating disorder and it was all in my head. And I had to kind of explain to him that this was actual physical pain that I was experiencing. Not to say that like having an ED can't be a physical thing, but this was like not just in my head, as he was saying. There was another doctor who said, I'm not sure what's wrong with you. Go home. Literally, just, I don't know. Go home. Take Tylenol. There were several times where the doctors were kind of sarcastic with me, where I think maybe they were thinking that I was seeking pain relievers. I was not. I was seeking pain relief, but I wanted to know what was wrong. I went to the doctor, different doctors, different hospitals about 6 or 7 times in 3 or 4 weeks. There was only once where a doctor actually tried to get me to take a test. The doctor gave me contrast. Back then, it was this big milky jug that you had to drink. You had to drink it, and then you had to take an MRI, I believe, or a CAT scan. They had me drink it, wait 20 to 45 minutes for it to like get down into my system, and then take an MRI or a CAT scan. Now, if they had even been thinking of Crohn's disease or any kind of inflammatory bowel disease when they had done this, they would have known that it takes longer for the stomach to digest things, especially in a state of flare, which was what I was in. This was a flare, but they didn't. So I waited the 20 to 45 minutes for my stomach to digest. It hadn't. And they couldn't see anything on any of the tests. And in that instance, they blamed me and said that I hadn't drank enough or that I had done it incorrectly. And frankly, every interaction that I'd had with a doctor up to that point was demeaning, to say the least. I was very tired of not being believed. So at a certain point, right before Christmas, I'd said, I'm not going to go to any more doctors. I'll deal with this myself. I'll figure it out. And we'll get back to that. At the time, for Christmas, my brother was dating this girl, and we went to her family's house, and her grandmother, who was like 80-something years old, looked me up and down and was like, oh, honey, you look like death. And and to tell you, that scared me. The old woman knew what she was doing, because on the car ride home, I told my mom, let's just try the doctor one more time. We get to the hospital. the nurses are taking my vitals. These are your symptoms, like pain in your stomach. Like, what do you mean? Can you elaborate? And as I'm like talking to the nurse, she's like, she's taking my weight. She's like, okay, your weight is this. And I was like, oh, that's not what it was a month ago. Like, just, I was literally just thinking out loud, like, that's not what it was a month ago before that. And the nurse was like, oh, what do you mean it wasn't like that a month ago? And I was like, well, I went to the doctor the day after Thanksgiving, and my weight was 25 pounds heavier. And the nurse looked at me, and I saw like a little bit of like, oh, in her eyes. And they admitted me right away. And it was a surprise to me too. That is not at all a healthy amount of weight to lose in 4 weeks. They admitted me, and luckily they had a gastroenterologist on staff. This was the first time that a gastroenterologist had looked at me. And the gastroenterologist said, okay, we'll do some tests. Like, before he even did the tests, he called a nurse in, and the nurse gave me morphine. And this was the first time that any doctor had given me any kind of pain relief at all. I had been describing my pain as a 10 every single time, and no one did anything about it. So they ran some tests. I was just loopy. You know, I had been doing a little bit of reading on my own, mostly scaring myself, but I had basically decided at that point I either had cancer or Crohn's disease. I told my mom that, and about 10 minutes later the doctor came in and he was like, I think you have Crohn's disease. And I was like, glad it's not cancer. So they kept me in as an inpatient for a week and a half, 2 weeks. I was severely malnourished. I was dehydrated, along with all the other stuff that was going on with me. Like, I was in a state. And I didn't realize this just because I was so fatigued and bogged down with all of this that I didn't even realize how unhealthy I had become, and how much I had declined. Yeah, since it was over Christmas, there weren't a lot of like doctors and nurses on staff, so I kind of made friends, if you will, acquaintances with the people that were. And one day my mom and I were talking to the nurse. We were like, oh, haha, like, you know, we're so glad that we came to you guys because everyone else just made us think that we were crazy. Like, we were just gonna give up. Who knows what would have happened? And the nurse, she was smiling before, but when we said this, her expression got kind of like serious. I guess maybe they had told my mother this and my mother didn't tell me, or maybe she wanted me to know separately. Either way, she pulled me aside a little bit later and she was like, we have your vitals from when you were admitted. It was something about my heart. I don't remember exactly what she said, but I do remember that she said that we don't see those kinds of like levels in people unless they are in a state of heart failure. And that really sobered me, I think, at that point, because I was like, to a certain extent, it was my job to try and advocate for myself, but I had been told that my problems weren't serious enough times that like something very serious could have happened within a couple days. But I do think that it was the responsibility of those doctors, of those nurses, of those people that I saw within the first 3 visits to run the right tests, to be patient, to believe a 17-year-old child, really. I was a teenager. I did not know that a gastroenterologist existed. We had the kind of insurance where you had to be recommended by a primary care doctor or the ER in order to see a specialist. Otherwise, it was an exorbitant amount of money. The option wasn't even really available to us unless someone stood up and said, hey, go see a gastroenterologist. Here's a write-up. Like, I'm older now, but I really do think that it was on the part of the adults in that situation, informed adults, to say, hey, I don't know what this is. There's probably someone who does. And actually the nearest gastroenterologist from where I lived was an hour away. So it wasn't even accessible in that way. It just makes me think that there are so many people out there that experience something similar. They don't find that nice doctor that believes them. They aren't able to travel to a different county in order to get help. They aren't able to see a specialist because without insurance, specialists can sometimes cost $250 to $500, like in America. The health system is a very broken place, and there are a lot of people who fall through the cracks, I think. And I'm very thankful that I wasn't one of them for very long, because this could have lasted years, and it could have gone a lot worse. That hospital stay was 2 weeks. They gave me steroids. They put me on nutrition, which is, I don't recommend it. It smells like hamster food. It's awful. They put me on a medication to suppress my immune system a little bit. After that, I got surgery in 2012, August of 2012. I've been pretty stable since then. I am thankful for that. There were a lot of things that I couldn't do because of my diagnosis, and there are a lot of hardships along the way. But I am thankful that I am, here because it was looking pretty dodgy for a while. And, there are a lot of people out there that have more serious iterations of Crohn's disease than I do. And I also want to acknowledge them, people who took much longer to get a diagnosis, people who have had to have multiple surgeries and lead much more kind of sedentary lifestyles than I'm able to. I was also kind of really scared during the whole process that I wasn't going to be believed, that being someone who is Black, and especially back then, I was very young, there are a lot of people like me with similar demographics, shall I say, that have experienced something similar. The rates of mortality for Black women when it comes to childbirth is the highest in the nation. Some people believe that Black people don't experience pain as intensely as their white counterparts, or that we have thicker skin or stronger bones or whatever. There are a lot of stereotypes within the medical community that present barriers for us, and I think that played a large role in me not being believed that I was actually in pain and not being taken seriously. There also could have been a lack of knowledge about Crohn's disease in general. I won't disregard that possibility either, because in the last 10 years or so, I think public education about it has gotten better. And if you're part of one of those marginalized communities, I do want to say that I know it's difficult. I know it's disheartening. It's scary, but your health is important. You are important, and keep trying. Keep going. I don't think you need me or anyone else to tell you that, but we're all important people, and I want us all to advocate for our own health and safety in this world. And even now, I think I struggle with self-advocacy. I struggle to say, hey, maybe I need a blood test. Maybe I need to rest. Maybe I need to stop working. There was a period in 2019-ish where I was just constantly getting the flu or infections just because I could not. I wasn't taking a break from work. I was just going. This whole ordeal, I think, these last 10 years has taught me that self-advocacy is necessary, and it's important. And I hope to convey that to other people as well. I also want to note that I'm telling my own personal experiences. I'm not saying that all doctors are like this. I'm not disavowing the medical community. I've had some very helpful doctors and nurses who have helped me on my own personal journey. I'm just trying to say that medical discrimination is a documented problem within the industry, and it affects many different populations of people. in many different ways, and I believe it's important to learn from their perspectives as well. Despite the dire nature of it and the barriers that I faced, I was very lucky to get diagnosed as quickly as I did. But yes, I just want to reiterate that this video is not anti-doctor. I believe in science. Get vaccinated. I also want to say that if you also have Crohn's disease, maybe you just found out, maybe you've been dealing with it for a long time, you're not alone. I spent a long time kind of mourning my healthy young adulthood and the opportunities that I could have had because of it. Seeing people on social media has definitely helped me feel a lot less alone. And I wanted to close it out by saying that if you have any questions, I'm very open to answering them. I do want to kind of lower the stigma about Crohn's disease, and I realize that some people have like not a great understanding of it. I've heard like jokes about it. I'm like, I don't think you know what this is about. So comment if you feel like it. I'll catch you next time. Thanks.